Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. I am your We Come in Peace captain, Myrriah Gossett. With me on the view screen, I have...
And I am your ward of Sarek, Paul Satachet.
Paul, welcome back to the pod. It's been a break.
Myrriah, thanks for having me.
Clyde will be hopefully joining us soon. He had some crew to take care of this evening. We are returning to Rewatch, the namesake of this podcast. We're rewatching Star Trek Discovery in preparations for its fifth and final season, which they've just announced is coming in April 2024. So this evening, we're going to be discussing season 1, episodes 1 and 2, the Vulcan Hello and the Battle at the Binary Stars. First, just a couple of reminders. Paul, where can people listen to this show and share things about it and do all those things?
Oh, as that reminder, I would like everyone to remind everyone. Oh, God, I'm really messing up already.
We're rusty. We're rusty.
Sarek would be pissed. Okay, anyway, but Sarek would hide his pissness. I'm supposed to remind listeners to subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love our content and you'd like to support us for just $2 per episode, try us at patreon.com/StarTrekPod. Try us. That didn't come out right either.
You're right.
My God.
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Yeah, and now is a great time to join because you'll be getting a lot of content, good bang for your buck. December's only going to have a couple of episodes with the holidays, and we're also going to be covering 2 to 3 episodes of Star Trek Discovery per podcast. So if you want to revisit some of this, I know Paul and I were just talking about, I didn't come on to Star Trek Discovery Pod until season 2 of Discovery.
And I didn't come on until they were running out of people and they found me on the street. Did
you know there's a Star Trek just like a corner where you can find wayward Trekkies and you pick them up so that you can put them on your podcast?
Is it called Wayward Station or something?
It's right next to the wormhole.
That's right. No, it's great or not great, but I was found. I'm here now.
Yes, it's the station's run by a very charming yet slightly cranky Bajoran who really knows her stuff. So
there you go. That's really selling it there.
I mean, I would go hang out at that station. You told me Kira was just hanging out. Let's go. Yes, if you are watching us live tonight on YouTube, you can interact with us using the chat feature. So you can hit us up with capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat if it's something you want us to pay attention to. You can also let us know about your hot takes using capital HF. What did you think about these? I guess these are not really hot takes since this is an old show at this point.
cold freaks.
A cold take because this did come out. When did
no, a season take. How about that?
Ooh, a seasonal take. Yes, this came out in 2017, September of 2017. Where were you in September of 2017, Paul?
Well, I was in probably Karachi, working for my spy agency. No, I've never been to Karachi. I just like saying that name.
It's a fun name.
Yeah,
a lot of good consonants, right?
Yeah, September 17th. What's happening there? I was probably trying to find a way to watch Star Trek without having to subscribe to Paramount Plus.
It would have been CBS All Access.
Yeah. So I think that's probably it. And then I was asking around people, is it good? Should I watch it? Is it good? Is it good? Is it good? That's probably where I was. If I really think about it. What about you?
I would have just finished, or I think starting. Either I just finished or I'm starting my last year of graduate school. So I was probably not sleeping a lot. And I was doing my big career pivot from nonprofit work into podcasting full time.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah. Clyde. Welcome to the bridge.
So glad to be here.
We were just talking about how Discovery premiered in September of 2017. And where were you in September of 2017? Or what was going on in your life?
2017, I was in Austin.
Mhm.
And I just really started getting into podcasting maybe earlier that year, maybe the year
Mhm.
before. Because I remember that like April is about the time when I met Mike Moody Garcia,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Hey, I've got this wild, crazy idea." And we were super excited about like Star Trek coming back. And he goes, "Just think about doing a podcast for Star Trek. We're gonna get a group of people. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could be like the cool Trek guy."
How'd that work out for you, Clyde?
I
Yeah, I
mean,
realized that I was a super nerd. It was great. It was fantastic.
Like it's a
No,
really different thing when you go like, oh, I have a weird, crazy idea. Because when I think of weird, crazy, I go, well, I have just found a way to travel through time.
yeah, no, it's not that crazy. But no, I was in 2017. I had one kid. I was about to have another. Um, yeah, the world felt somewhat stable at that time. It's so funny to look back and think,
mhm.
man, my world. I felt like I had time to do things like a podcast.
We used to
Um,
go to a studio in person to do it. Do you remember that, Clyde?
yes, I do. I remember. So when the first couple episodes, they would premiere on Paramount Plus. I'd
It was
watch them.
CBS All Access at the
Oh,
time.
that's right. Sorry, you're right. CBS All Access. They'd come on at like 7 on a Sunday night. I'd watch them, then hop in my car, drive 25 minutes to south in Austin, walk all the way up to it's like the
The third floor.
third floor, walk up to the third floor, and then sit in the room in the middle on a Sunday night and record the podcast. So it was live, like you'd watch it, and then I'd race down there, and we'd get ready and we'd go. And sometimes there'd be costumes and props, and we were all huddled around a table, trying not to mess up the sound.
Mhm.
And we started off; it was just audio.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Like you didn't have to worry about what you were wearing or if you wore that the
Like
week
we are
before.
now.
I know. It takes
It
listen,
shows like I'm wearing
listen.
a very ripped
It
t-shirt.
No.
Listen, it takes a lot of work to get a t-shirt to look this level of like wrinkled and disheveledness. Like you just don't like pull a t-shirt out of somewhere and be like, "Oh, it's good to go." You got to like craft it to look like you don't care. Is how I look at it.
Well, everyone might not
Artistically
realize this, but
disheveled.
like Clyde is actually 104, and like it takes a
There you
little
go.
bit of makeup to get him looking that good.
It's true.
You
We have a
know,
whole team that stops by.
do you have any idea what I have to do to get my hair right for this podcast? Like it's just
For our
so much work.
audio only listeners, this is
Yes,
a joke, but
because I'm bald. I have not had hair for a very long time. So it's
um
Well, thank you for joining us
yeah.
for Memory Lane.
I know, it was like our
Memory
long
Hyperspace Lane.
tangent. It's
yeah.
like nice to rethink about 2017. It felt like a simpler time.
It
Um
did. It didn't seem like a simpler time. It
It didn't,
absolutely
but
was
it
simpler.
it did. Oh, nostalgia. Okay, but some other things that have happened recently in the Trek news world. At Comic-Con in Brazil was when they made the announcement that Discovery will be returning in April 2024, which means we now have a schedule. So, guys, this means we probably have to watch more like 3 to maybe 4 episodes of Discovery per
I
review.
mean, not for nothing, and I don't want to spoil it, but I enjoyed watching the first 2 episodes so much. I actually already watched the third. So
I remembered why I binged the whole first season. It was very bingeable for
Well,
this
we're going to
revisit.
have a lively podcast then.
have
Ooh.
you guys watched it since like 2017?
No, I have not.
Yes. I watch it I watch it on planes because it's every
Oh,
plane has freaking Paramount Plus on it, and they always have at least the first 2 episodes of Discovery and then a smattering of some other episodes. And so I've watched the pilot at least a few times over the last like 2 years.
I
I
have
think
not seen it in 5 years and or 6, and wow,
yeah, like
took me back.
I go to select episodes, like the Harry Mudd episode I go to a lot,
That's a good
or
one.
or season 3 where uh they meet the what you call it, the on the edge of tomorrow, the what you call it, keep the guardian on the edge of tomorrow, where
Mhm.
Jojo goes. I mean,
Mhm.
that's probably my
The
favorite
the
episode.
jump, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, how about we talk
Um,
about some episodes, eh? Or there's
yeah,
more.
I'm almost done. So they also there were some award nominations, both Critic Choice and Saturn Awards, across for performance and best of for Picard, Strange New Worlds, and Lower Decks, which is very exciting. Specifically, Critics' Choice Award nominations for Celia Rose Gooding for Strange New Worlds, and Lower Decks as well at the Critics' Choice. So, and Picard got a lot of love at the Saturn Awards. So that will be exciting to
Woohoo.
see what they take home.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's time to. I was like, I think I'll need to make a new video because these aren't quite hot frakes. These are kind of mulled over frakes.
Yeah,
But
there
we'll
we go.
play a video anyway.
We're selling it. We're selling it.
Yeah.
Luke, a revisit, a nostalgia frake. We'll go with this nostalgia frake.
Oh.
Here we go.
Like a back in the day freak.
A back in the day freak. Okay, so we'll start with episode 1, the Vulcan Hello. This was directed by David Semmel, story by Brian Fuller and Alex Kurtzman, teleplay by Akiva Goldsman and Brian Fuller. Again, it premiered on September 24th, 2017. These did premiere. It was a double premiere, so both of these episodes did come out at the same time. So I think it's appropriate that we are starting with them as a back-to-back review. For the Vulcan Hello has such a I love Klingons, and so to me this was so exciting to start with Klingons. I will say one thing for Delta flyers, the Paramount Plus does not have the subtitles for the Klingon, for any Klingon. Anytime they're speaking in Klingon, there's no subtitles there. So a couple of times that I've watched this, I've been like, oh, I'm just gonna live in mystery.
Delta Flyer as in the airline, as opposed to Delta Flyer as in the Voyager.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
There you go, Clyde.
I was and also, well, our
there's also a
Patreons-
podcast called the Delta Flyers,
Exactly.
and a lot of our patrons
Yeah.
listen to it.
yeah, and our Patreons are always talking about the Delta Flyer. So I was like, wait, what are we talking about?
Delta Airlines. So
Interesting, because
anyway.
I watched it on Paramount Plus, and I was like, I was all into the Klingon subtitles. That has to be tough because I don't know how you would know anything that was going on.
Nope, but I luckily I did rewatch it today with all of the correct subtitles. So it was just funny the last few times I watched it. I was like, oh, okay, mystery, cool. But yeah, to me this really kicked off with a bang. I will say it definitely did not feel like the Shrek I grew up with, and they definitely, I think, said this is not the Trek you grew up with. And I was kind of okay with it. I was like, oh, this feels like I graduated into adult Trek.
You know what's super interesting?
Well, more like it reminded me a lot. Like I keep going back to when I first watched this series, I went, oh, this feels like Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek. And I was not upset at that at all.
You know, it's interesting to go back and watch it now, right? Because there's the feeling that I had when I originally watched it, and you don't know anything. All you know is, man, Trek is back, and I'm super excited. And you have all these expectations of what you think that means. And watching it and going, huh, okay, this is a different experience. Now, 6 years later, when we've had 5 or 6 different shows, we've like the whole world has changed. You've seen how the story has progressed. Now you go back and you go, oh yeah, no, that was like, I'm not worried about the difference. I'm looking back and going, oh man, I'm here for this. And it was done really, really well. I mean, Paul has that. I'm about to disagree with everything you're saying. Look, but I going back, this was really well done. Like in terms of the story that they were telling. I think there's always some nits to pick. I will say I'm still struggling with the makeup of the Klingon and how they the departure. I'm still struggling with that a little bit.
I think well, Paul, did you want to give your quick take before we jump in?
First, I think it's beautiful. To announce your presence with authority there. I go it looks really.
It said budget.
Yeah, absolutely. It says don't worry, we have money to burn, kind of thing. I feel like there are a lot of story choices that you could see in the pilot that really, for me, made it really hard to latch on to anyone. That it's not necessarily anyone's fault, except for example, here's this human who is raised by Vulcans. That sounds like that could be something, right? I think that could be something. But then we have the actor who's talking like that in and out, and you go is she talking like that for a reason? Because you don't know that she's raised by a Vulcan until and it just feels a little off and weird for a bit. Saru has this passive aggressiveness about him throughout this whole bit. I go am I supposed to know this? He's being a dick. There are all these things where I go oh, I don't know if I like anyone here. The Klingons are, I feel because of the makeup and it's hard to relate to them because they're so alien in some ways. And I think what makes it really a real departure for me that was a hard pill to swallow was it departed from the camp. In Strange New Worlds, for example, there's a bit of camp in there. In most of Star Trek, whether it be with the carpets on Next Generation or Rom on there's some form of campiness where I felt like the way that it announced itself was oh, there is no camp in here, and that was very interesting to me. It was confronting in a way that it was a little hard to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing I kind of come back to that I always find interesting is this particular season of Discovery is the one with the most conflict that occurred in the writer's room and the creative.
Did it?
Oh, yeah. Because Brian Fuller was brought in and he brought in two other folks to co-show run with him. And by the show was announced in a February, and by October Fuller left.
Sure.
And then Kurtzman kind of took over with Akiva and then brought in Michelle Paradise. And there's it's interesting. I think the later down the line, and we'll discuss as we go, it's you see the writers we now know in Star Trek, like Bo Kim and Kristen Beyer and all of these folks who we know have carried through the whole time. And have expanded the universe and worked on the comic books and all these other things too. I mean, to me, the other thing that took me in right off the bat, and I can see your point, Paul, is there is no one that's inherently likable, I think, except for Georgiou. I think
who dies.
Right, he dies in the second episode, but in this first episode, I was enthralled, and I think it also helps that you're going off of the reputation of Michelle Yeoh. It's you had me as soon as you said she's my captain in this episode.
So I want to agree with you, and then slightly have a different take. I agree. When you were saying there was no one to latch onto, the minute that Georgiou stepped on the screen, she was captivating. And I'm going to disagree. I'm a huge Michelle Yeoh fan, but I don't think it had anything to do with her reputation. She's flat out amazing in this. She's just she carries it. Going back and look, and I go, you know what? I don't know if I've said this before. She's on the Mount Rushmore. You have to give her credit. When you start thinking about Star Trek captains and you want to think about who's in the Star Trek Captain Hall of Fame.
You think Archer?
This guy. I know who you're about to say. He's not in it, but she is she fits the seat. Like
Mhm.
she just like, and so I was like, yeah, I'm in this. I also I was interested in Burnham pretty early on. That might be partial reputation. It might be the fact that I'm just gonna put it out there. Man, this is a black woman like lead. Like I'm in. I want to see this. Where's this going? So I was hooked on this. Now, to your point, I don't know. Look, if you go back and listen to the old podcast, you'll hear me say, I don't know about Saru. Like, I'm not in.
Mhm.
Like, this is not a hot take. The rest of the cast started to grow on me. Yeah, like it took a while.
It's a very bold move because we know what's coming is that the first 2 episodes of a show entitled Discovery, right? It's the title
Mhm.
of the ship that we're eventually going to follow. The first 2 episodes don't take place on that ship, and half the crew we meet don't ever see them again. It's like we have Kayla and Saru and Burnham.
Well, there's one other guy. I think the I forget his name, the black guy who's on the bridge. I think I saw him in the background. Like he's there, but you just like as an
Barely.
extra. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like no lines, right? And
No.
so it's like the other thing that's like it's hard to give this a fully fresh take because there are things that like I now know and love, right? Like I love Mary Chieffo as our Klingon. I
thought about you when I saw her name pop on the screen. And I was like,
because
oh,
she's
Myrriah's gonna be
also
so excited.
I love her and she's also very nice.
Yes.
So it's like, she's a nice person and I think
Did
she
you meet
does an
her?
incredible job. Yeah, we've met a few times.
Well, like, did you meet her at Star Trek Day?
No, she comes
Oh.
to the show that I produce in Los Angeles called Don't Tell My Mother. So I have met her previously, but I did also see her at Star Trek Day. Yes.
Oh.
Because
It's
she
just
hosted the red
never
carpet.
Never ending,
it still
Clyde.
hurts.
It's a
It
time loop.
still hurts. It still hurts.
But yeah, I want to bring it back to so Fetcher Sketcher in the chat says I was excited for 2 leads being women of color, and I think that is such a like important. It felt important. It was like turning on this like legacy media and being such a Janeway Voyager fan. It felt like this was the next step that I wanted to see. It was also interesting to me that our main character is someone who is not a captain. And this was definitely one of the first times that has occurred in Trek.
For sure. Like
I was trying to figure
say,
out how it was gonna work. I was like, how does this work?
like, it's funny because he said like, oh, here are these 2 women, and then you go, you kill one of them, and you go, let's put the man in. like as like so like it was very interesting. Like I see everything you're saying, and I agree. I really like Giorgio, and when she died, I was like, oh, I wonder where this is go. As far as the cliffhanger, I imagine that was really strong. Like like you go like, oh, like once you watch the first 2 episodes, you have no idea what
No idea
what they show.
Nothing.
You
And
all it says is like, this is the Star Trek we're going to tell right now, which I think is slick. I really like how slick that was.
We'll get into this next week, but I felt like it got there was a tonal shift between episodes 2 and 3. Like it just it feels a little bit different. Now, there's some moments in here where I think from a plot, I'm struggling to go, okay, I'm a ride with you because you're Trek. But I question a little bit, like it wasn't bulletproof. Like
it is, and I wonder if I have a theory because of this showrunner swap and the
Myrriah
conflict.
theory.
Myrriah theory. This is a creative Myrriah theory. Is once they finally, to me, it seemed like Brian Fuller had a very clear vision of what he thought this show was going to be. It's going to be the Klingon War Star Trek, right?
Yeah. Oh.
And then I think once the conflict started arising, there was this shift of like, how do we actually tell the stories of these characters that we've kind of set up in these first 2 episodes ish, right? Like we've really only set up really Saru and Burnham, but you're ending with Burnham essentially having to start from blank slate. There's like a theory of her reputation with Saru to build some trust there. But in reality, this is a character that's completely starting over at episode 3. And I think that's probably why there is that tonal shift. Is, to me, I think what a lot of people have critiqued with Discovery, and I haven't minded it, but I can see it, is there's often full resets of the world to what we then have to expect going forward. And I think a lot of that, especially prior to Michelle Paradise getting the reins, and kind of, I think from 3 forward, it's very clear to me the trajectory and the vision of this show. But I think it did have quite a few kind of herky-jerky beginnings. And to me, this 2-part pilot that resets before we even get to the 3rd episode, I think it didn't do a lot of favors. I think there's some really cool world building that happens in these first 2 episodes, especially with the Klingons and setting up the big bad of this season with kind of the biggest and baddest of lore, so yeah, it's interesting to me.
Myrriah, it's interesting that you say that, because I definitely think there's a Star Trek pass here. And Paul, you're right, it's beautiful. So from a sense of, man, there's a ship, there's plenty of sci-fi stuff, it's gorgeous, it's got the Trek brand on it, but it breaks a bunch of rules that I don't know you should break. So for me, as a TV podcaster, I'm used to watching, especially for someone who used to have a podcast called Pilot Watching. I'm used to watching pilots and going, okay, well, let's think about this. Where are we at the first commercial break? How am I feeling? Am I still into it? Like, okay, are you building characters that I'm attached to? Like I'm trying to decide. And if you think about it from the standpoint of, there's so much content out there right now, why am I spending my time watching this? We didn't get the character introduction to episode 3. Like, you spent 2 full episodes,
except for with Burnham, we got a lot of backstory, but
we got the main character. But for the ensemble, the people that we would ride with for the next 6 seasons, we did not meet really any of them outside of the main character and a little bit of Saru. We didn't really get them into episode 3. That's insane.
Well, I think Mike there says it perfectly, right?
The first 2 are a prologue.
Yeah, I think.
Well done. Well said.
I think, and if you can see it that way, then I think that helps the first 2 episodes immensely. But but we're trained to watch a series in a certain way. So
right.
like the pilot is supposed to show. Clyde, you have to.
I'm curious though. You bring up an interesting point, Paul, and I like this idea of prologue. What would have happened?
It's Mike. It's not me.
I know, Mike. But you also bring up the way we're supposed to watch the show. What would have happened if we had started with episode 3?
I think that would have been, it'd be the origin story, right? You start with Lorca. You start with this person going to coming from jail to meet Lorca, and here is so you're the fish out of water kind of thing. Like, you could have not seen the whole pilot, the whole two episodes, and I don't think you would have missed anything. Narratively,
interesting.
Narratively,
I feel like we should hold for next week and talk about.
Like you would miss.
Think about what you just said, though, Paul. Like,
let me think about
big statement.
Like what you would have missed is the world building.
Yeah, I agree.
And the question is, like, is that important, or is that world building already embedded in the way that we watch television? Anyway, I'm not.
I wonder though if. I do think the first 2 episodes gives us a glimmer to Burnham in a way that I don't think we would have had the same sympathies for her going into episode 3. Because by the time that she's like admitting guilt at the end of episode 2, which so Battle of the Binary Stars, which was directed by Adam Kane, story by Brian Fuller, teleplay by Gretchen Jayberg and Aaron Harberts. There's some directorial choices in 2 that I thought were kind of strange, but I will say the battle scenes were incredible. They really said, we're putting full movie production into the special effects, and I could definitely see it. But it was interesting to see Burnham take the responsibility with the sadness. And to me, it was like one of those moments when you're like, oh, if Giorgio was still here, this wouldn't happen, because Giorgio was the one who took you, like, said, you come with me onto this ship and do this thing. And yes, Giorgio ended up dying, but it did feel like strange that there was no one defending Burnham's actions at all. And it was just a straight like jail with no like no possibilities of parole.
So I think we're just blending 1 and 2 together, right? We're
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they premiered together. I'm thinking them as part 1 and 2.
Here's the thing that I don't like when I was watching this. And I didn't really get this the first time ago. What really did Burnham do?
Yes. Speak on that. Keep going, Paul, because I struggled with it the first time, and I struggled with it today.
She did attack a captain, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
she did assault her commanding officer,
which people did to Kirk all the time.
Almost started a war.
Almost started a war, but did not.
Hold up. How does she almost start a war?
Because she aimed at the ship and like she was about to push fire until Giorgio tried to shoot her.
How many times would Kirk do that? Like every other episode?
This is pre-Kirk, right? This is pre-Kirk. So
pre-Kirk.
So here's all this thing. But here's the thing that was like really, as I'm watching it, I didn't realize this the first time I saw it. Like she was right.
Mm-hmm.
like all the firing, all that stuff, she didn't do. She was so like basically she's going to jail for life for pinching her captain and putting adjusting a few settings, on a console. That's what she's going to jail for.
Well, I mean,
for life.
Yes, and this was my struggle, and it was my struggle then, and it's my struggle now. And part of that is I'm looking, going, you've got all these people who are gonna turn around and hate her, and I'm trying to figure out for what, because like you're like, well, people died, yeah, but what exactly does she have to do with that? Like, the beam went off, you saw the Klingons, and then you called for backup, which is what you're supposed to do. When backup got there, Klingons started shooting them. That wasn't on her.
But let's do the flip side, okay? Let's do the flip side, because like we gotta be fair and balanced. That's what we're known for.
Yeah, sure.
So here's the thing that I also didn't realize at the why are they mad at her, or like why is there a Klingon war? It's because of her, because she had a chance to capture the guy. And she went from stun to kill, and she killed him.
Okay,
and she knew that if she killed him, it was going to start a war. So, like, that's why she goes to jail, not because of like a Vulcan little pinch.
So I agree that her emotions got the better of her, and she didn't like. She had an opportunity to stun him. I also did not like the fact that Saru didn't let her bring Giorgio's body back, but I'm with you.
Yeah,
Saru sucks.
It's also Saru does kind of suck in the beginning. As soon as he loses his ganglia, he's all good to go. But
100%. But anyway, go on.
I thought it was because like technically Takuvma is still like alive before she beams off. And so if there are any life signs, like you should have just beamed that body off with her, because then they don't know if he's dead and you can still hold it like it was just it was a flawed execution of that plan.
We are all on the same page. I was worried.
Why I have some reservations about the love fest that is for like season like episodes 1 and 2, because like there are these things where
no, there's definitely things like I don't think they needed to both show and tell us the Katra moment with Sarek, because like when we see him saving her as a small child, to me I then said, oh, they have a special connection, and now I get that. And so then when he's able to come in, I was like, you're using up this amount of power to explain how you can talk to her. Just talk. I don't really care. I was like, I know a lot of the nerds care, and that's why you put this in here, but like I would have just been like, she says, oh, since I was a child, and he could go, yes, and then I would have put 2 and 2 together. You don't need to tell me and show me, just show me.
Yeah, like if absolutely. Like, although I'm a nerd, they go, "Oh, look, Vulcans have superpowers,but that's okay."
But that's like I don't care.
But here's another thing that I go, like,
Sarek, of course he has superpowers.
But that brings up the interesting point. Like, man, was that ship that you just placed by taking a character like Sarek and bringing him into this world
Mm-hmm.
was super interesting. When you were gonna, like, you basically teased us for 2, maybe 3 seasons with the concept of Spock. Like that was an interesting choice. Like, you're gonna bring in Sarek, who is the father of one of the pillar characters in all of Trek.
Cybok?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're basically going to rewrite canon for us. And it's almost like you did it because you knew we were going to spend and obsess over how does this work forever. Well, we're already, and that now goes, okay, well, why is she never mentioned? And how does this fit into the 10-year before Enterprise timeline? It felt like they were poking at us and teasing us, and like, I'm gonna throw something out there for you nerds. I just wasn't sure why.
Like, to that point, like, there's I know you care very little about this, but there's some real canon recon stuff here. Like who, like, how this dude have a cloaking device? Like, we didn't find that cloak device till Kirk's time, and the Romulans had it, and the Romulans didn't, and the Klingons didn't have it until they traded like warp engines for like cloaking. Like, there's all this stuff being like 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 shattered upon, phasered upon, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if you're gonna be able to stitch this together, but like
We get there.
but like, do we know we jump forward in time so we don't have to deal with it?
Yeah, Strange New Worlds is gonna clean it up later. It's fine.
Yeah, there's a whole dynamic of you can never mention the fact that Discovery ever existed, yada yada yada.
Which I'm actually fine with that. I'm actually fine with that because, like, like that go, at least you clean that up,
Yeah.
But like, here you go. Okay, you're gonna go, kidnap the leader of the Klingon movement. It's just gonna be the two of us. You're gonna go on the whole ship and try to. It's like two people going on to like the Enterprise and go like, we're gonna capture.
Well,
Kirk.
they had like sliced the ship in pieces, so like there is that.
I mean,
The other, I will say, it's like it's probably also unfair because like I love the comic, the Light of Kales, which explains like the creation of this ship and kind of the backstory to Takuvma. It's really good. And it makes me want Klingon series even more all the time. But it explains a lot of the like lore and like the backstory to Takuvma and like the torchbearer and like and Vok and like all these things. And it's really compelling, and it gives so much richness that I'm just like, I wish these first 2 episodes were more that and part of the Battle of the Binary Stars.
Maybe you and I should write a Game of Thrones style based in the Klingon, like House of blah blah blah, Blood and Honor.
I would love it.
Yeah,
I would love it so much. It's so much drama and like not weird, but like all their spirituality stuff, and like they go on these crazy journeys. It's really good. So where was I going with this? Oh, the retconning of it all. So yeah, it's like this ship has like such lore in the Klingon culture that to me it would make sense that this ship has some sort of extra technology, not superpower, but like it has this technology because it was also like built together by these like scrappers and like people who were kind of on the outskirts of Klingon society. And so it's like all this wheeling and dealing. It's like, to me, it like makes sense when you see the larger picture of it. But like all of that would have been more interesting to have had here, I think, than some of the like, I appreciated seeing some of the Burnham backstory, but we eventually get to that more once we reintroduce Spock, right? So it's like some of that could have come. But this all goes back to I think the writers' room was
fractured.
Constantly fractured in this first season. And I think it shows in and not to like any of the performers' detriment. I think Sonequa Martin Green does an incredible job of like seeing where this character has started and where she is now. I think that progression of someone who lived in a very strict and like the Vulcan quote unquote nature environment, like to where she is now, has been a really captivating journey. And it's fun to go back and see the beginnings of it, because Sonequa Martin Green is so like dropped
know.
into this character.
No, like I feel like she starts off a weirdo, and then she ends up captain.
Yeah.
But
What we all want, right? We're all the
Yeah.
weirdos, and we want to be the captain.
and it's totally cool. Like, like it's just like, the end. I guess what I'm criticizing is the entry into the series,
Right.
and I think like per we discussed, like, because we can't really talk about this without talking about like how this was supposed to launch CBS All Access,
right?
So like like you would
I mean, and
spend.
it technically was the most streamed show that they had.
Yeah, it was
when
their
it
first
Yes.
stream show, right? Like,
But
and then like
they had like 2 at the time. There's like this and The Good Fight.
and
Yeah.
and this was like, for all of it, like you could see like, hey, you want to see a Star Trek movie every week, like, and I get it. I totally get it. I understand why they made that choice. From narratively, I just feel like there's a pros and cons of that. And the pros and cons, like, for me, from an old, not just chronologically, but like a long time Star Trekker, like, I feel that like, oh, you're playing fast and loose with Star Trek in a way that Abrams got away with in his first Star Trek, but didn't quite get away with in second. So like, there's just
Yeah. And
Anyway.
to me, the other big tonal shift moment for me that I realized in watching was once Burnham is in the brig, right, for pinching a neck and making bad orders. She is talking to the person, the guy from the bridge who comes in after the head injury, and he's looking for sick bay. And then the ship gets shot, and he goes flying out into space. And I was like, oh, we're not just like red shirting people with no dialogue. We're going to have a small emotional connection. And then this is Trek where people can die.
Oh, I think absolutely, but like, I think we need to bring up the King's little.
The first 2 episodes are better than Counter at Farpoint.
Okay, so
Well,
that is interesting. I love that. Like, if I had to look, is it better than Farpoint?
Yes, the answer is yes to that question. Is yes.
Look, Farpoint. If I go back,
the jellyfish.
Because I go back and I'm in like junior high. Farpoint was pretty dopey.
It's also, I'd say it's also a series where we don't get the full introduction to the cast in the first 2 episodes as well.
Yeah. Sure, and you bring in like a super being, and like that's really good. That's a really like
that trial was terrible.
I'm not gonna defend that. I'm not gonna defend the trial. So it is,
well, and also
it did have the camp. I think it tonally still felt like Star Trek. Do you know what I mean?
True.
Yeah, yes. That's the one thing. So like,
yes.
But the special effects were bad even for the 90s. Like,
like, I don't know. Like, if you look at like, I think Young makes a great point. I think like, yeah, I think I need to step off my soapbox and go, calm the hell down, pal. You've had worse, or at least equal, and you've been fine with it. So shut up. I think absolutely. I'll stand down. Wait.
I mean, I will say, I thought that what they were going for was kind of giving us this sense of this, I don't know, deep culture woundedness of the Klingons, and I felt that a little bit, right?
Sure.
Like I felt that you've got this. Nothing that was said felt non-Klingon to me, right?
Yeah.
Like it all felt like, okay, this lines up. Like I get the anger, the disrespect, and again, when you think about it from a prequel standpoint, we've all had what feels like centuries of understanding the Klingons. This whole idea of hold up, let's nobody get excited. Let's talk to them. Let's be diplomatic here. We're all looking like, oh man, you're foolish. Like that's dumb. Like they're about to, eat your liver. It felt on brand for Klingons. to this day, I still felt like I had to read an article to explain why these Klingons look so drastically different from the Klingons that we know.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
mean,
still like, what?
my controversial take, and I think I've said this before, is I didn't mind the redesign. I was like, I can understand people's like reaction to the redesign, but to me they looked fairly similar to the 2009 Star Trek Klingons that we were introduced to, because those are also designed by Neville Page, and they felt like a slight variation of that. And like I don't know, I didn't mind it. To me, what would have made more sense is like once they did decide that they thought it was not the best way to go or whatever based on fan reactions, is like just like pepper in a diverse array of Klingons, because my thing is like we are all people and we all look very different. We are
Clyde
all
and I are
humans.
basically twins.
I mean, twinning energy right now. And so I'm just like, to me, it would make sense that there's different like factions and looks and different appeals. But it was like, oh, if you had like kind of mixed in everybody instead of being like, oh, when Klingons are at war, they lose all their hair, you know, it would have, I don't know.
I think like here's my bit. Like if I to just like reduce it. Like I've always seen Klingons as mammals.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I see Discovery Klingons, they feel not mammals to me.
Do you think it's because it's the outfits are more reptilian?
I think it's because the skin tends to be glossy in a way that is like not like super baby walled up to the point where it almost looks like a shell. You know, but that's just me. That's my Paul take. Paul Frank.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the thing that you get with Star Trek fans of this is that we're looking for a reason to believe, right? And so for the most part, if you just do the bare minimum, we'll swallow it, right? We'll be like, oh, okay. So yeah, all you had to, Myrriah, I agree with you 100%. If you had peppered in a few different Lincoln Klingons in any of the episodes where you bring Klingons back, we would have been like, see, that's it. They're just different types. Klingons come in all shapes and sizes. That's what it is. Everybody would have been happy, and we would have moved on, never talked about it again.
Yeah, because like the thing I think to me that got me on board is like Takuvma looks so. He's trying to portray essentially a god that's going to bring together all of these houses, right? Like, he is a messiah, and so to me, that dark makeup with that out, I was like, I can see as like if I was designing this creature if I was or telling someone how I wanted something to look and feel as like a director or producer of like, I need this Klingon to look like the messiah of Klingons. I think it was effective.
Oh, sure. Like that person would not have to sashay away.
Exactly. They would have gotten top prize on Drag Race that night. That outfit was great.
Yeah, I'm looking at some pictures, and Myrriah, you've both of you have hit on it. It is a glossy skin. It does feel reptilian. The outfits are also very much a departure.
Yeah.
Though I would say the Discovery outfits are a bit of a departure too, right? It does feel like Discovery said, "Hey, we're going to do our own thing." If you had changed a few things, you could have created Discovery without ever using the Star Trek like branding.
Yeah, no. Like
Strange New Worlds, however, it's like no. All right, we're gonna redo this whole idea of a prequel. We're gonna redo this in a safe space, and it feels much more like a prequel to the original series to me. This, don't get me wrong, I love Discovery, but I think
them jumping to the future was the smartest thing they ever did.
100%.
I actually like season 2.
Yeah,
I think season 2 is great. You know, I like, well, maybe not great, but like I like season 2. Like I think my favorite episode though is like the time travel Giorgio episode. Like I go like, oh, this is what Discovery is like when it's hitting its peak. where like everyone is like, everyone's where everything is just like hitting well. Like, like it's one of my favorite episodes to watch. Like the two-parter, right? Giorgio goes back in time, like not Giorgio, like Empress Giorgio goes back in time, and we'll get to it, guys. Don't worry about it. We'll get to it. Yeah.
Yeah. The other choice, the choice I did think was very strange to me, and I don't know if it was just like how they had to do it for production reasons. Maybe they had to reuse actors. I don't know, but the court scene where you cannot see any of the people on the panel's face. I said, why? Why do we need? I've never seen a court trial in Star Trek look like this before.
Well,
ever.
because she was in a Section 31 court. She just didn't know.
Like, it can be dark and spooky, but it just felt like they ran out of, like, they used up all of the budget on something and they needed to reuse a room. And so they just lit it like that so we couldn't tell.
well, this is what I mean. Is like, as a Trek fan, you'll find reasons to believe. It's like, oh, well, they were passing down judgment and they were trying to hide their identities. And I was like, yeah, but that's not Trek, right? We will later see, and again, one of my favorite episodes of Strange New Worlds, Ad Astra, where you're looking at also a very significant court martial, opportunity for a court martial, and it's nothing but light.
Yeah,
it is nothing but light everywhere. That was an interesting choice, but Discovery is the darkest like Trek series from a lighting standpoint in the franchise.
Yeah, it is hard to watch the middle of the day. I will say I had to close the blinds.
It literally has
something called
Black Alert.
Yeah, it's called Black Alert. But the other
we're not there yet, Paul. We're not there yet.
The other thing I wanted to bring up,
Shinzo does not have a Black Alert.
No, but I did really like the Shinjo's design. I also really liked the design of Burnham's suit that she goes over to the Klingon ship in. Looked
that
great.
Was beautiful. That was amazing. I was like,
I was impressed.
I don't remember how cool this is.
And then the thing that I really loved was the Klingon space suit that she meets with the warrior outside. He looked dope. It was so cool looking. It was like both medieval and sci-fi futuristic, and I was like, I love this.
Again, I'm not trying to pick too many nits. Myrriah, you're spot on as usual. But here's the thing. In retrospect, that space battle was 2 seconds long. Like, that to me was a missed opportunity.
I wanted some more hand-to-hand combat on top of that ship.
He startles her. He lunges at her. She lunges at him. He's cut. That's literally it. That's the end of it. Like, you're right.
I mean, it teaches you the importance of not using sharp objects in space. They said, here's the moral lesson of this episode. Don't use sharp. Don't run with scissors in space.
Yeah. It's also funny because I remember that whole thing slightly differently, to be honest with you. And I was like, oh, in the rewatch, I was like, I remember this differently.
You just push the button the wrong way and hit him? Because in that case, wouldn't you want to move backwards, not towards the blade? But I'm just saying, like, just me.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a very interesting way to relaunch the series. I was still excited. I was ready to hit play on episode 3 as soon as episode 2 ended. They definitely knew how to tell the beginnings of a story and to entice you into wanting to watch more. So, I mean, to me, that means it's successful.
Yeah, no, like we're talking about it.
We are talking about it.
And like, if you look
however
at it,
many years, 6 years later.
Like, do you know what we don't talk about?
Encounter Farpoint.
Enterprise pilot. Does anyone remember the Enterprise pilot? Yeah, see, look at Clyde's face. He doesn't know. He hasn't done his Star Trek homework. He doesn't care. You don't care. You see? So, like, it's memorable. I'll give you that, right? It's like, so.
Well, yeah, but it did relaunch. It relaunched 1,000 ships, you could say, into orbit. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Any other thoughts? No.
I saw a comment in the chat that made me want to just leave the pod altogether. Like the things that I'm sensitive to, and people just want to poke my buttons. Listen. Ultimately, I know we're taking some revised shots at the pilot, but Paul, to your point, it's memorable, and there was nothing about this that was not going to make me watch the next
Exactly.
6 seasons, right? And then everything else they put in front of me.
And if you watch Farpoint, like I had this weird experience today. I was driving down the street and I drove by this elementary school, and there was a digital sign that said attendance matters. Innocuous enough, but like as I'm driving down, I'm going like, who's that sign for? Because if you're a kid in an elementary school and you're not going to this class,
you're not going to see the sign.
You're not going to see the sign. And
if you're a parent and you're not taking your kid to school, you're not going to see the sign.
Or you drive by and go, oh, I was thinking of not taking my kid to school, but now I saw that. Like, who is it for?
I think I know exactly who it's for. It's for parents who take their kids out to go on vacations, not during regular school vacations.
If you're that type of parent, do you think you'll be dissuaded? Well, that sign told me not to take my kid to Cabo. That's not going to happen.
You're right. It's absolutely not going to happen. They're not worried about the sign.
And so this connects back to.
And here's how it connects back. Whether you watch Farpoint or like Vulcan Hello or the Enterprise pilot where the Klingon fell to Earth, Clyde, in that cornfield, like you were gonna watch anyway.
Yeah.
Enterprise show that I would not watch because
that was because of the theme song.
Theme song might have been the best thing about the first season of that.
You didn't have Face of the Heart. Anyway, but in that case, you're probably gonna watch it anyway. Like we got all the way through. What's the episode you love, Clyde? In Next Generation, that season 1.
Oh my goodness, jeez, the Code of Honor.
Yeah, we got through that.
So for those of you who don't know, Mike Moody Garcia and I also do a podcast on Stargate SG-1. And we're going through some of the best episodes, and there's a couple that we skipped, and some of our patrons know that a while back we started a kind of a one-off adjacent Stargate SG-1 like watch along, and we got to this episode that was absolutely terrible. I mean,
Which
it was
one? Because I know
horrible. I forget what it's called, but it's one where Carter's in the big dresses, and it's about like trading women like chattel, and it's just horrible. It's awful. And it turns out that the writer of that episode is the same writer of Code of Honor. And some of the like she doubled down and wrote like 3 of them. And I'm like, how are you still employed? Like, these are terrible. No, it's hard to do, and I can't do it. But
Emancipation.
Yeah, System 1. Well, Kern was one that was with us when we watched it, and he heard me profusely apologize for not skipping it. Yeah. So anyway, there's some tough episodes, but I still like where it was going. I like when looking back, I love the development of the characters in Discovery. Myrriah, I think you're 100%. You can feel some of the infighting going on and how some of the scripts are constructed. But it's like anything else. When we started the podcast, and I think the first off season that we did for Discovery, we went back and said, hey, we're going to watch some new episodes, some old episodes. And in part because Grant Davis, who was doing it with us, he was the newbie. He hadn't seen Discovery, was the first Trek he had ever watched. So we went back, and what we learned is that first season of Star Trek, you're telling Grant, this is an amazing show. This is one of the best sci-fi shows of all time. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. So you go back, and Grant is trying to figure out why Picard is such a prick. And we realize that, like, even though you, like, when you go back and watch the first season of The Next Generation, it wasn't like cinematic gold. Like, they struggled a little bit to find their footing. Encounter at Farpoint being an example, but they found it, and when they hit their stride, it was magical. And I look back and go, the same thing happened with Discovery. Myrriah, you said it earlier. By the time you get to season 3, you're upset that there aren't more episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I'm looking at this and going, it was pretty enough and interesting enough that I wasn't gonna not watch it, but it gets much better.
Yep.
And I think it actually gets better, even though I don't personally like Lorca. By episode 3, it gets really intriguing, and they bring in cast members that you're like, oh, I'm curious about these people.
Mm-hmm.
Word.
Yeah, I'm excited for 3. So next episode, we will be watching 3, 4, and 5. So get ready, y'all. I'm excited to continue this rewatch. We will be back next week again, same time, same place.
Next week?
Next week, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. You're not in Austin yet.
Okay, great.
You don't get to Austin until the Saturday. I'm glad I know your schedule.
Yeah.
Maybe better than he does.
Paul and I are working on a movie together. That's why I know.
That's awesome.
It's going to be fun. We'll tell you all about it more when we can. But yes, you can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple and on Spotify. Visit StarTrekPod.co to find links to where you can share the show, review the show, do all those fun things, and to our Patreon. You can still find us over on X. Thanks to Karen, who helps us run that hot mess over there. Gives you updates of when we're going live. And we will see you all next time. Live long and prosper, y'all.
Ooh.
Bye.
Choo-choo, choo-choo.